Tula Bischof is a Kenyan decolonial psychologist, coach, counselor, and consultant, and the founder of Loving Tula and co-founder of Mycelia Collective. She is someone deeply comfortable with depth and brings the same commitment into every space she enters. Her coaching work supports individuals in examining their relationship with themselves, with others, and with the natural world through decolonial inquiry programs that center liberation-focused perspectives. In her counseling practice, she works with big feelers, those who are deeply self-aware but are still learning to hold their own depth. As a consultant, Tula works with CBOs, NGOs, and small to medium organizations across Kenya, facilitating capacity building events in decolonial leadership and practices and supporting organizational well-being from the inside out. She is someone who believes that real transformation can't happen at the surface. It happens in the nuance, the nitty-gritty, and the places most people would rather avoid.
Every person
has a story.
Some are loud,
others
are buried
in silence. And here we bring them to light.
Some conversations change how we think. Others change how we live. This is a space for both. Welcome to In the Quiet podcast, where honesty isn't filtered, but silent cups are filled. Allow me welcome Tula Bischof.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here today and can't wait to see how the conversation unravels.
I'm so happy to have you. Yeah, if you're new here and you don't know, this is the Quiet podcast where silent cups are filled, and I am your host, Kenzuri Sandra, and we talk about psychology, mental health, everything psychology and mental health. And today I'm so happy to have Tula to talk to us about a very interesting and rare topic that we barely talk about in our spaces, in our culture, in our countries. We barely talk about it, but it's very important. But before we start our topic, I'd love to know, how has your week been?
That's a good question. So I think, oh my goodness, today's already Friday.
Yeah.
I don't know, the week went by in like the blink of an eye, but I think it's okay. I've been trying to survive the cold in Nairobi lately. It's been so cold. Yeah. And your week, how has your week been?
Yeah, speaking of cold, last night I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
I had to wear 2 jumpers. So I had my pajamas. I had to get a sweatband.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Because I already have 3 bed covers.
Oh my God.
And I was so cold. I took like 2 cups of tea.
Yeah.
Like, it's really cold.
Yeah,
like, it was so surprising, especially last night. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, I never knew I needed a heater.
Yeah.
Until last night.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my week has been good.
Nice,
and a lot of learning. I have learned lots of things through working in a hospital. So it has been a very interesting week. Yeah. A busy week.
Okay.
I would say.
Nice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So today's topic is on decolonizing the African mind and realizing that it might require grieving the person colonialism forced us to become. So I can state it rightfully. Decolonizing the African mind might require grieving the person colonialism forced us to become. What made you want to venture into decolonizing our minds? Because that's something that most people are not even thinking about.
Yeah.
Why that?
Yeah. Well, I think it's been a number of things that have kind of influenced my passion for decoloniality. I'd say that in the beginning, I was already practicing a lot of the elements of it, or just the those strains of thought, but I didn't have the language to kind of describe what I was understanding and some of the observations that I noticed in our Kenyan society. But I would say that my mom has been a huge influence. I think she's the most radical woman I know in the best way possible. She's such an opinionated, justice-driven individual. And if you know my mom, you know how she's a very strong personality. There's a time she made a whole police station leave because they were being corrupt and they had stopped many people, and she made such a commotion. Like, even till this day, it's hard to share the story because people are like, are you serious? Like, police, but people literally packed up their things and left because they got so intimidated. But she's always had this strong passion for, she did her master's education in economics and international NGO management. So she's always been, and at that time when she was doing her thesis, which was in the 1990s, she picked a very radical topic as well at the time, but critiquing some of the relationships that the Western world had with African countries. So, I think just being her daughter and seeing how passionately she feels about Kenya till this day, and how that has, how she has expressed this interest in so many different interests that she has for Kenya. So like business-wise, the company that she started, despite it struggling, she really puts her heart into it. And I think she's very interested in questioning some of the mindsets, and so that was a huge part of it. And I'd say also when I was studying psychology, I don't know if it was just me, but I was so frustrated with some of the things we were learning. And I remember I would be that annoying student who would always have, actually, I really like that theory. I like that talkative student, and if you can't tell how talkative I am already, but... So I would be, some things I was just so upset with, especially emotional regulation, just the theories that exist there. And that's what I did my bachelor's thesis on, research. It was really, I didn't know if it was just a rebelling spirit in me, but there were so many things where I'm like, okay, this isn't fully, I didn't agree with, and I didn't know the words, the language at the time. But then I took an African studies course in my undergraduate. And through that, I also came to learn a little bit about, decolonial thought and studies. And that's when I was able to first get a few more words to understand, okay, this is actually what's happening. And then I think that kind of made me go into now African knowledge systems. That kind of opened interest for that, especially in psychology. And sorry, I'm about to wrap up this whole intro.
That's okay. Take your
It's
time.
a bit of a long story.
Take your time.
And then our last course of the bachelor's degree in psychology, we had to learn about the philosophical origins of the studies of the field. And I remember I was literally just learning about Plato, Aristotle, Descartes. Like, I'm just like, okay, so they're not going to tell us that it's primarily like sitting on, Western knowledge systems. And it might seem innocent, on the surface of like, okay, but this is just how it emerged, that's what it is. But we cannot paint psychology to be this universal thing without advocating for plurality in the field. And I remember I was like a bit upset. I tried bringing it up, and then the response that I would get from academia is like, yeah, well, this is just how, psychology started. And I'm just like, maybe then the correct word should be Western psychology, because societies all around the world have always had knowledge that guided how they understood things like mental health, how they understood it's even in the words we use, health. Why did we use the term health to describe something of like the state of our minds, and how we're doing. So language is very powerful in shaping how we engage with different topics. I think that's what motivated me. And then when I moved to Kenya, I've always been super... I think my friends tend to describe me as very intense because I like to talk about deep things and nuances and I wasn't ever that like jokey friend who had always all the banter. Like for me, I was just like, oh, let's talk about this problem in society. That's what I'm really interested about. And I think then after when I came back to Kenya and I started posting content on Instagram, just sharing some of my ideas, some of my reflections on psychology, I saw, okay, people are really resonating with this. And it was so beautiful because then I actually wanted to understand, okay, what is the foundation of decolonial psychology? Sometimes I'm someone who's very fast. I want to know things really quickly because I love learning so much. So I want to be like, no, I want to learn everything right now. But this year my New Year's resolution was to slow things down a bit, to read more, to slow down, to learn more from other people, because I can be so comfortable in my mind and my thoughts, but I also wanted to open myself up more. So I went through this journey of really understanding now the foundations of what decolonial psychology is. And so I read a lot of Frantz Fanon, who is one of like the, founders of, I don't want to say founders, but main contributors to the field.
Pillars, yeah.
Yeah, and then we have Paulo Freire as well. And then there's Albert Quijano, I don't know if I'm not pronouncing, but I haven't read a lot of him, but I've read of Paulo Freire and Frantz Fanon. And I think their works just, it gave me so much more of the language that I was looking for. And now I can really feel, this is really the right space for me. I don't know how to.
Oh my God, you're so, even you light up, even when you talk about it. Like you're so passionate about it. And I love that. And what also I would add on is that for me, one of the reasons as to why I started the podcast and why I want to do research on the African psychology is, yes, the fathers of psychology are not African men or even African women. They're white men. And accepting that there is a difference to life. There is a different way that we live as an African people. And that should be accepted. And this should be okay that we can have theories coming from our own cultures and put our own language. Because as you said, language is very important. There are words that you can't find meaning for in English. They only make sense in your own language. And I feel like today we just think they are just like simple things. It goes back to even our health, our mindset, our philosophies, how we did or do things that can't be directly turned into a Western way. Like it's impossible. And when we don't acknowledge that, we miss out on the rightful solutions when it comes to mental health in our field, when it comes to mental health in our own context. Especially if researchers are all basing on a foundation that you are not the main focus. Because it wouldn't be a lie to say that psychology was never done with the focus of an African person in mind, or an African woman, or even a woman in general. Because even women weren't the main study. So it means there is a big gap, but then when it comes to Africans, there is even a bigger gap. With how many cultures that we have, with how beautiful differences that we have, that require their own specific, how we say that we are offering tailored approach to this therapy. I feel like we need to have tailored psychological theories to deal with different cultures and backgrounds. If we know that let's say a Kikuyu culture here in Kenya, there is a way they view mental health. There is what they used to do. There is a solution that they used to have. What was the basis? What was the foundation of that? And I feel like we also had psychologists. Maybe it's because they didn't write. They didn't write. So there is no way for us to get that information. But having people like you in this space that are willing to take on the work and now document new theories, do the research, be intentional, be passionate, and be willing to do that work other than just accepting something that is being given to you. It's not bad. It's good because we use this knowledge. It's what we use in therapy. It's what we use in our everyday life in terms of our careers. But more could be done, which is even better.
I agree with you. And just really quickly to jump onto what you were saying about the importance of needing tailored approaches, to African contexts. I think within academia, we also need to change how we look at cultural psychology, because oftentimes culture is seen as like an addition to like the main psychology, to the main neutral Western psychology. And that's why a lot, and I'm sure we'll get more into this, is the topic of plurality. Because one of the biggest misconceptions around decoloniality is people confuse it for indigenization. But indigenization is a part of decoloniality, but it's like, it isn't, if you look at, thought leaders in African psychology, in decolonial studies and African studies as well, the goal isn't reject this universalism. Let's go with this universalism, like no Western things. Let's just do this African things. And there's a lot of research that is showing how what we use to like distinguish different worldviews, they're actually a lot more connected than we make them out to be. So how do we now proceed with this new information, you know, and going in with a bit more of a nuanced and complete, well-rounded view of the situation, as opposed to it being like a full rejection. Because I'm sure also as a psychologist, we can both agree that there's a lot in Western psychology which is helpful and which is amazing,
it's
you know.
We're using.
Exactly. But I think that, so how can we create room for both?
That is so right. I think like we can just now enter into the topic, because now you've already like set a very good foundation for it. For someone who's already watching, what is decolonization and how did it come about? Why? You can take us through that.
So decolonization, and I like to first start with the distinction between decolonization and decoloniality.
Okay.
And actually, I love to credit Mumbi Masharia for this on Instagram, because when I was, just deepening into my journey with decoloniality, I came across her Instagram post where she shared the difference between decoloniality and decolonization.
Okay.
And so decolonization can often be seen as like a specific event, like what is happening. It's the removal of power, the removal of influence. So it could be seen as, for example, the British leaving Kenya. But decoloniality is a bit more curious about what are the legacies that have remained, you know, in our relationships with ourselves, with others. And now I'm speaking mostly from decoloniality in psychology. What are the legacies that have remained and continue to shape how we relate with ourselves, with our emotions? We're looking at the coloniality of emotions. That's one of my special focuses, special interests. And then you also have how has it shaped our relational dynamics and patterns? How do we see conflict? You know, even power and leadership. That's one, I think, very obvious example in Africa. You know, how has coloniality shaped leadership perceptions and dynamics? That, you know, how have Kenyans themselves become sub-oppressors, you know, and oppressing each other. So that's what decoloniality is. And so it's an orientation that practitioners can embody, be it in any field, and psychologists, anthropologists, people who are in leadership. And that's what I also do with the consultancy work, working with NGOs or like small to medium organizations to help them revisit what are the assumptions what are the knowledge systems which are guiding your leadership practices in your organization, you know, and so things like that, and trying to understand the deeper foundations of how it continues to stay alive in our lives.
That is very interesting. So if someone who's watching, why does this conversation matter? Why should they be involved in this conversation?
Oh my goodness, that's such a good question. And I think across history, as humanity, we have repeated the same exact mistakes, and it seems as though we're not learning. That's just there's so many patterns that we can look at. Like, let's say the most, let's just look at Kenya. Like, colonization was how many years ago? You know, independence was how many years ago? And a lot of us don't really understand the full magnitude of what happened. A cousin of mine shared with me, and he went to school in a more rural area in Kenya. Can you imagine what they were teaching him in school? That the transatlantic slave trade, which a better name for that is the African Holocaust, was for job opportunities. So they got job opportunities in the US. And that is what is being taught in a Kenyan school
today.
This was not very long ago. And I came across two other people who have come across the same narrative which is being taught in school. So if we're also not learning about, you know, the full magnitude of our history, if we're not connecting with the experiences of our ancestors, you know, and we think that we can just kind of proceed on, move along with technology, with infrastructure, and like, you know, put some money here, put some money there, let's do this project development. I'm like, sure, we're doing all of these things on the surface, but who is actually doing the work underneath, which guides everything else that emerges, you know, later on, or even at the present moment. And I think it's like, even if we're starting with it's like our mindsets shape so much more. I think sometimes when we talk about this conversation, it's like, yeah, you should have a growth mindset, positive mindset. But I'm like, can we also have a mindset that can challenge things around us? Can we also have a mindset that, is socially driven, that can be a little bit rebellious, and can point out when things are wrong, and I think sometimes that's what decoloniality also affords us. And it isn't anti-Western. It isn't like, reject everything that is Western, but it is calling out the hegemony of Western knowledge frameworks.
Yes.
So there's a difference of that. And indigenization, which is in our context in Africa, Africanization, is a huge part of decoloniality, because it's like, how can we not take this European, this Western psychology, and let's just adjust it to like this setting. No, it's not only that, but it's also about recognizing that we have been having knowledges that have shaped how we approach mental health, well-being. Even when we talk about mental health stigma, my co-founder of like Mycelia Collective, her name is Marine Al-Nil. She's a psychologist and a Sudanese activist as well. And she shared we had this conversation about like this mental health stigma in Africa. And she was telling me like, it's so man-made. it's man-made because where did this stigma come from? You come to a country and you completely inject so much shame in their ways, in their practices, especially practices around health and well-being.
Yes.
And then you come and bring your own and you say, this is the more civilized one. Of course, we'll feel, first of all, you've made people feel so ashamed of their own practices, and now they're supposed to find safety in your practice. And by the way, there's already so much that's wrong with Western psychology. In the first example is that it isolates so much of mental health to the individual.
Yes.
It doesn't look at their context. It doesn't look at, and that's my problem also with now things like cultural or like systemic psychology. Like I'm very for those perspectives, but I would love to see more. We need to get a bit more specific about what's happening, like especially the decolonial part of it, because
identifying
identifying. I agree with you. Identifying like the exact event that has happened. And I think the most dominant perspectives which have been challenging Western frameworks have been like feminist psychology, which has been, really good. And then it has been like now taking more of a psychosocial approach. So like looking at the social situation of the person, systemic approaches, but we also need to look at global life events. That's the part that's really important. So to answer your question, why it's important is it allows us to be more, it increases our social awareness. And I like Paulo Freire's work on, he did a lot of work that analyzed the consciousness of the oppressor and the oppressed. And in his philosophies around education, he uses the term conscienciação. It's a Portuguese term, but it's basically what we should all be striving for, is to increase our systemic awareness, increase how we exist, alongside community, and how we can be more responsible to it. So I think that's the importance of it.
And that is so, it's so deep and so yet so clear. So clear as why it matters. And my second question would be, how has colonialism affected, because you've said it hasn't just affected our politics, it hasn't just affected our economics or our economies. I want us to now be specific to how it has affected how we see ourselves in terms of our identity, in terms of our perception. That's a really good question. I think, I like in my coaching work, I think this is where it shows up the most, because they're really tailored for individuals who want to engage more with decolonial inquiry in their own lives. But one of the conversations that we keep coming back to, I think especially in my coaching work, is our perceptions of worth. What ontology, what does it mean to be a human being? And if we're looking at, by the way, not to over-promote my work, but this is related. I'm working on an emotions guide that helps people identify like where does coloniality show up in my emotional life, and so we need to give language to how coloniality feels and shows up in our personal lives. And one of those things is when it comes to worth,
our worth is tied to titles, to what we have, to ownership. To be a full human being is to have resources, to drive that Prado, to have that the most newest fashion, the labels, and to be is to have. We attach so much worth to those things. And then, so a lot of the work that we do is like, okay, if you remove all of those things, who are you? And like also understanding. This is where I also draw a lot from African knowledge systems. And one of them is, Afro-communitarianism, which is a bigger philosophy of a family of different ideas across the continent. But one of the most famous examples is Ubuntu. So
Yes.
like I am because we are. And there it puts a strong emphasis on our on our humanity through being able to be in community with others. But there we also have to be really curious about what is the definition of community. Because in European context, community is like people living together.
Yes.
But in African context, it's people feeling responsible for each other.
Yeah.
So one way of doing that is like, okay, to get into your full self, and especially when you're decolonizing our perceptions of what it is like to be, and it's honestly different for every person, because it's not like in those sessions I'm like, yeah, you believe this because of that, or like this or that.
Yeah.
But it's a kind of shared exploration of like the subject matter in front of us that we're all kind of engulfed in. And so I'd say that one way this affects our personal lives is how we see our worth. Do we only feel worthy when we have things, when we have money, when we, but can we also ascribe our worth to our innate qualities like that just make us so complementary to this world that the world needs more of us, to really root in what we're bringing.
Yeah.
And that's what worth is for me,
Yes,
and also being able to be, I like the way that a lot of African knowledge systems look at the whole concept of the self. What is the self? That's where you also have the term eco-cultural selfhood, which is one of the theories that I would love to also share a little bit about.
Yes,
but
yes,
it doesn't look at the self as just me, but it looks at you with others, you with the world. So the self is a lot more, it permeates into these other realms that we're constantly like engaging with. And so when we're making decisions, for example, in the European context, it's like, okay, what's the best decision for me? But when in African context, there's the misconception with collectivistic and individualistic societies.
Yes.
By the way, the psychologist who came up with those terms was a Dutch guy, which isn't entirely bad, but we need to acknowledge that when he was coming and doing this work in said collectivistic societies, he was understanding and interpreting their experiences through his lens. So he said that collectivistic societies, they prioritize the needs of the community over the self. But if you, a lot of African psychologists are coming out to say that that is not true. Africans have been prioritizing individuality.
Yes.
They see the importance of it. But what they see is they don't, you can't even like begin to say, okay, individuality, collectivism, because it's it's holism. They're interconnected, intertwined. So when we're making decisions, it's about a negotiation between these different parts. So that's where you get that beautiful systematic approach of being able to see like, okay, if I make this decision, can it be good for me? Can it be good for my wider community? And can it be good for the world?
Yes.
And there's a quote which I read once when I was really going through a lot of the literature on this. I really forget the name of the person who wrote it, but this person said that of all the things the world is missing out on, it's African philosophical frameworks and leadership. And I think
that is beautiful.
Yeah, it is so true. Because imagine if our leaders said, okay, whatever decision that we make, it must be good for these three realms. It must be good for like the people who are involved, the wider community and the world at large. So I think
I agree with you. I agree with you because when you look at it, most of the things that colonialists abolished when they first came into Africa was the systematic leaderships that were in place.
Yeah.
And now that you say it, because I hadn't seen it from your angle, now that I look at our monarchy system, it's sort of like did the same thing. And now I think I realize why the first thing that they abolished was our harvest day.
Can you share more about that? I'm not...
So umuganura, it's called umuganura.
Okay.
So usually what we studied from what we practice, there are two different things now, because I think now we are more civilized, I think, or even people are busier.
Yeah.
So from what I read is that umuganura, would be a day in August, which is an harvest season.
Okay.
So you would bring part of your harvest, share with your neighbors.
Okay.
It's because there could be some who didn't have any harvest.
Okay.
But if they all have, then you put together, then you share.
Oh, that's amazing.
And take some to the king.
Okay.
And
this is in Rwanda?
That is in Rwanda.
Okay.
And then it would be kept. And I think in time of hunger, the king would give back that food.
Okay.
So even in your planting season, you aren't just thinking about yourself, but yes, you're planning for yourself, for your family. But you know, once I harvest, I will help my neighbors, I'll share with my family. But then at the end of the day, the system is set in a way that it'll all share as a whole community, as a whole kingdom.
Yeah.
It's something that brought people together.
Yeah.
But from what you're saying, it wasn't centered at one person only.
Yeah.
It considered, yes, you are doing this thing for yourself, but then it is also going to benefit someone who may not have been lucky to have that.
Yeah.
But also, once you give back, it comes back to you. Now, if in any case of drought, famine, the king gives back to you people. And learning, because we learned that was one of the first things that the Belgians or Germans abolished.
Okay, I didn't know that.
It was just brought back by the new government.
Really?
The RPF government.
Yeah.
Now we celebrate it. But the way we celebrate it now, it's on a national level.
Yeah.
But I think it's the concept of understanding what you just said.
Yeah.
And I think there are also maybe viewers will tell us, maybe in their cultures they can look and see.
Yeah.
As you described it, there is more of our psychology in our living that is not directly, you can't immediately see it unless maybe you think about it or even have that information.
Yeah.
And that makes me want to ask you, would you have any specific things that you think we lost due to colonialism, like spirituality or in terms of wellness that you can share?
No, I think that's a really good question, and I also appreciate you sharing about Rwanda. I didn't know that. I
hope I've said it right.
But that is so interesting, and I'm definitely going to read more on that because it's and it's also reminding me to answer your question. So you're asking, what are some of the specific things we sort of lost during colonization? That, and I'd say that it's really. I'd say that it was never fully destroyed. I think there were always people who were keeping things alive, keeping traditions alive. And one of those people is my mom's side of the family. Aww. So my grandmother, they were the last family in the whole village to convert to Christianity. And to add some more context from what my mom shared with me is if you didn't convert to Christianity, you had to pay more taxes. So that was kind of the only reason why they had converted.
Wow.
But they were practicing Kalenjin spirituality, and I'm yet to speak more with because my grandmother, she only spoke Kalenjin. She didn't speak Swahili or English. And my shags is like really really deep. Like I don't even.
And you don't speak Kalenjin?
No, I don't. But I can understand like a few words. But it's basically I don't even know if there's electricity there now. I think they've put electricity now there, but it's super, in interior. And I remember my mom used to tell me how much pride they had. And my great-grandmother, Toyoi, was also the medicine woman of the whole village.
Wow.
And the midwife.
Yeah.
So
my grandma was the midwife.
Oh, really? That's so cool. And is she still alive?
No. She passed in 2019.
Oh, okay. Were you able to connect with her?
We lived together.
Oh, that's
she
amazing.
lived at home. Yeah. Oh my God, if I start sharing about that woman, I feel like she's the wisest person I've ever met.
Amazing. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you short, but I feel like everyone in my family can agree, or even people who know her can agree, because even my dad's cousins, those are my uncles and my aunties, they would come home to ask about, because in Rwanda, you can't get married legally if you don't have your 3 generations. I don't know, like your great-grandparent, your grandma. Now it's your great-great-great-grandma now.
Okay.
So like 3 of them.
Okay.
So that they know that you don't share them with your partner.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
So she's the person that they would come to to ask about the names because her sisters forgot these things. But I learned our history from her.
Amazing.
By the time I was studying our history in class, I always knew what we were studying. Like I always knew what they're saying.
Yeah.
I learned our history. I learned about colonization, the era of colonization. I learned about the era of them fleeing to Uganda because of the genocide. I learned about the coming back. Like I learned all these things from her before I could even learn them from school. So by the time I was in school, I already knew these things from her. And I'm going to still talk about her, sorry.
No, it's okay.
And when it came to parenting, I feel like she had the best parenting style.
Yeah.
Even today we laugh about it at home with my dad and my aunties.
Yeah.
We say, because let's say I would wake up in the morning.
Okay.
And maybe just sit. And maybe do nothing. Yet now everyone, my cousins are moving around, making porridge, and then she'll be like, she wouldn't tell you why you're not doing something or go do something. Yeah. She would now come closer to you. She had her own seat that she would sit there. And then she calls you, come sit near her. And then she says, I have a story for you. Yeah. Like, okay. Because I love stories. I think that's why I even love stories. Then she'll be like, there once was a frog named, let's say named Green. Green had siblings. She says the number of your siblings. And Green didn't want to work. So they would wake up in the morning, they tell Green, go fetch water. Yeah. Green says, I feel weak. Yeah. I feel tired, I feel sick. Yeah. They say, at least Green, go get firewood so that we cook, so that mom can cook and we eat. Green says, I'm tired, I'm fatigued. You know, I didn't have a good night's sleep. Yeah. They say, Green, go bring banana leaves to cover the food. Green says, has another excuse. And then the mom cooks the food, everyone is fetching water, then they serve. And then the mom says, Green, come and eat. And then Green will say, I can try. I will do my best to see if I can come and eat. And she says, but then the siblings the siblings started getting frustrated. They started hating Green because they would do all the work and Green would enjoy. So they did something bad to Green. So they started pouring water on his bed. And I was like, so do you want to be like Green or you want to be like... Okay, what do you think of Green? Do you think Green was a good person? You're like, no, that is not fair. How can he come and eat and drink the milk yet he never went milking? She's like, exactly. So don't be Green. No. And my dad says every time she would tell them stories or proverbs whenever as a form of displaying them. And that's how she would also discipline us. And I think that also there's ways of disciplining that are cultural. Because now you realize it's not just me. It's not just my parents. Even others in their generation, they were raised in such way. There were proverbs being said to them every day. They did something that made them think. And their proverbs are very deep. That is beautiful. I feel like there is everything there's a proverb for every situation. There's a proverb for every situation. It means there were intentional people to create art as a form of discipline. So I feel like you really made me share a lot. But so that is so true. Having specific things that we might have lost. And so you were saying that your grandma and your family was the last one to convert into Christianity. And there were people who were so... would we say, patriotic
Yeah.
to their, and also loved their own selves.
Yes. Yeah.
But they were pushed
Yeah.
against the wall.
Yeah.
And it's not that it shouldn't even be a blame that they converted.
Yeah, exactly.
They had to convert to survive, to stay.
Yeah.
And that is a smart move. You're not going to lose your life, lose your lineage.
Yeah.
You could adapt, but now teach your history to the people who are going to come from you. And that makes me want to ask you, how should we grieve that? Because now we've lost these things. And I feel like my grandma having to share these things without even me asking was a form of grieving for her. Yeah. She grieves the life they could have had if they were refugees. Yeah. She grieves the systems they had that maybe were working for them. They loved that life of having a community, of living together, of having an identity, and then overnight losing it. How do we grieve? How are we grieving today?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And thank you for sharing on your grandmother. She sounds really like an amazing woman. And I think also that how to grieve it. Grief is, I think I want to begin by saying how messy of an emotion it is. And like rightfully so, because I think grief, of course, there are those different stages to grief, but it's disorienting. And sometimes I'd say that a lot of people, you can't grieve until you also discover what you've lost or what has, and I want to also be very careful with saying that, because I don't believe that African culture was lost due to colonialism or that it was completely killed out, erased. I think that it was kept alive, and culture is something that is ever evolving. Yes. And one thing in specific now, and looking in the African context, is it exists in hybridity with coloniality. Because there's some things in our culture that we try to hold on to, saying, it's our African culture. But I hate to break it to you, it's coloniality. So I just want to also share how to grieve that. I think, first of all, there's that it's allowed to be a messy process. That's the first thing that I want to say. I think it's also uncomfortable. I say that true decoloniality requires an amount of discomfort in us. It doesn't only require us to spend time thinking on, the easy methods of that. It's very easy to be like, no, I want only African things now, like the colonizers, let's just that type of mindset. But we want to have a very nuanced and a full understanding of the situation, and how we keep it alive, and that to not escape. Dr. Tani Emmanuel Lukong is actually, I really recommend people to read his work if you want to get more into the African psychology. And he speaks a lot about not jumping from one universalism, Western frameworks to African frameworks, but to have all of what because everything has something important to offer. But I think to grieve it, it requires us to also spend some time thinking about how to reclaim things that have been lost, and how would we like it to look like right now. And I think that grief doesn't have to be something that is alone. It can also be done in community, with friends, with family members, even speaking about to our older members of the family, trying to understand what were their experiences like, and I also want to empathize that for many of that generation, it might be hard to open up about things that have happened, because for them, sometimes you'll try to ask them. I've tried asking also some other family members, and they're like, was Satani, or that's for Satan. If you try to ask anything about their history, their spirituality, they're like, no, that's it's satanic, it's demonic, So there's also a lot of shame that has been placed upon our ways of being and knowing and existing, and spirituality as well. So then I think that finding a community of people who are willing to unravel that together, so we're not doing that work alone. But I also wanted to, just on the point of what we've lost, I think one topic that is super nice for anyone to reflect on is respectability politics. So that's again on that topic of worth. Dr. Marcus Watson, he created this theory. He came up with this theory called the half-connecting theory, and he's trying to look at how coloniality. He also looked at the consciousness of the Western and Westerners and of Africans, for example, and the half-connecting theory. He says that. he's trying to understand now the consciousness of the colonizers, you know, and of Eurocentric beliefs. And he says that they have this immense fear of community and depending on someone. And that's why they cling on to this hyper-independence and autonomy like as a coping mechanism. So that's why they also kind of commodify their reality. They commodify, like it's about extracting, it's about like overcoming and gaining resources. And it's because of this big fear of depending on community. And he compares that with full body connecting, which is in a lot of African contexts where we're not afraid, even in our body language. How does coloniality remain alive in our body language? How we relate with others? You know, are we trying to like keep that professionalism, you know, stature? Like even in psychologists, like there's a Dr. Seth Opong is another good name to look into. I recommend his book, Indigenous Psychology in Africa, and he talks about how African psychologists we're kind of replicating information from the West, but we're not challenging enough. And the conferences that exist is about talking about it, but let's see how to implement it. Let's see how to actually, and that's another, I've just gone into so many tangents. I'm even trying to find where I was going with this.
You were going to what we lost and reclaiming. Yeah,
like the full body. So trying to see how does coloniality live in our bodies, you know, and in our relational patterns, in what happens when there's conflict, you know, even what you said about the relationship between parent and child. And when we look at corporal punishment, you know, and things like that, is that really something that has always been a part of African culture, you know? And so really revisiting things like that and also being sensitive to what would it mean for us if this was true, because that's the hard part of grief.
Yes.
It's always like, what will this change mean for us? But I think that paying attention to how it is in our bodies is important.
Yeah, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. And I feel like we've barely scratched the surface.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be okay for you to come back for a part 2. So we can fully now get it deep into it, because I still had like 5 questions.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah,
and we've only asked 3.
Yeah.
So, and that brings us to the end of the first part. Thank you so much for being here. And I can't wait for the next part.
Yeah.
If you're new here and you haven't subscribed, please do. And subscribe to wait for the next part, for part 2 from Loving Tula. You can reach her on our Instagram. You can tell us your Instagram.
Yeah, my Instagram is Loving Tula, so loving and then Tula, or my website, lovingtolove.com.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that you can ask more questions, or if you're curious, or if you need her services, you can reach out to her. And you can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, TikTok, and Instagram on In the Quiet Podcast. I've been Kenzuri. Ciao. Bye. Oh my God.
Every person has a story. Some loud, others the buried in silence. And here we bring them to light.
Some conversations change how we think. Others change how we live. This is a space for both. Welcome to In the Quiet Podcast, where honesty isn't filtered, but silent cups are filled.